Hi, I'm John, and this is collaborative work with Maria Fasoi and Maria Konstantinidou. This work is based on the MSc dissertation of Maria Fasoi. We addressed the task of computational authorship analysis of Homeric text, and we approached it with character-level statistical language modeling, which we applied on Iliad, Odyssey, and for Homeric hymns. Few words about our motivation. It stems from the Homeric question, which is possibly the most prominent issue ever raised in classical studies. At the center of the debate lies the composition process of Homer's two epic poems, Iliad and Odyssey. It focuses mainly on whether they were originally composed by a single poet and later enriched and improved by performing bards, or if they reached their current form by collecting and stitching together several smaller independent parts, perhaps pre-existing oral formulaic composition used by bards to improvise and remember longer works. It is now commonly accepted that both the Iliad and the Odyssey are products of a collective effort involving numerous authors, each contributing unknown portions of text, probably scattered throughout the thousands of verses and gradually smoothed into the rest of the poems. It cannot be determined whether a single individual or distinct group of poets contributed larger chunks of such additional verses or even whole books. Therefore, our pursuit in this paper is to study sizable portions of text of the type that urged some scholars, such as Fowler, to doubt the authenticity of whole books. We note here that the division of both Iliad and Odyssey in books, rhapsodies as they are called in Greek, is substantially later than their original composition. Other poetry of antiquity has been attributed to Homer from time to time. As the name suggests, the Homeric hymns were among them due to their form and language. Although it is now known that this is not the case, and due to lack of much contemporary poetry, we employ them as a useful parallel for linguistic comparison with the two poems. The research questions that we studied are the following two. Do any of the books in either Iliad or Odyssey demonstrate a higher or lower than the average degree of linguistic integration to the entire poem? And does any of them present sufficient linguistic divergence to raise authorship doubts, perhaps? And how do they compare to similar literature of their time? Second, can language models be as successful as humans in classifying excerpts from Iliad and Odyssey? We use the term computational authorship analysis to refer to the study of any association between a corpus and a group of authors. When only a single author is involved and when the association concerns attribution, then the task is authorship attribution or verification. In verification, the aim is to determine whether two texts should be attributed to the same author or not. Attribution, on the other hand, is the problem of identifying the author of an anonymous text or a text whose authorship is in doubt. We model the Homeric language using character-level statistical language models, which are based on the Markov assumption. That is, modeling the probability of the next character by being given only the n-1 preceding characters. The counts of all sequences of n characters, called n-grams, are calculated over a corpus, and the probability distribution over all the possible characters is modeled per gram. In this work, we use trigrams that sought to achieve the best results in preliminary experiments. And in order to make the individual analysis of a text in n-grams more comprehensible, we present here the character trigrams of the following phrase from the preface of the first book of Iliad. You can see then that the trigrams being formed as the window slides, character by character, are the following three. We used perplexity as an indicator of how well a language model predicts an excerpt. In NLP, this measure is used to evaluate language models. In our study, though, we employed it as a means to evaluate the origin of a textual excerpt with greater, unrestricted, meaning values indicating weak relation between the text in question and the model, and then lower values indicating a strong relation. To complement perplexity with a notion of statistical significance, we computed and added 95% confidence intervals. This means that instead of reporting the perplexity of a single excerpt in question, we randomly sampled many more and we reported the mean, along with perplexity that was ranked at the lower 2.5% and at the higher 97.5% as a position. First, we analyzed the poems by training on and evaluating the books of each Homeric poem internally. Then, we used language models trained on the books of the poem to analyze external excerpts taken from 4 Homeric hymns. We also assessed Homeric language models with regards to language understanding. In order to do so, first we assessed the ability of human experts to classify Homeric texts. The predictions of the experts were then compared with those of a text classifier that was based on 2 Homeric language models. We developed 24 language models per poem, using excerpts from all but one book of the same poem, Iliad and Odyssey, and then computing the perplexity on that remaining one. Performing this cyclically for all the books of the respective epic poem gives 24 perplexity scores per poem, 48 overall. These two diagrams show the perplexity scores for Iliad and Odyssey respectively, along with the respective confidence intervals. By looking at the lowest confidence intervals of Iliad on the left, we see that it is the second and eighth book that have the least perplexity. This means that there are excerpts within these books that are strongly associated linguistically with the remaining 23 books. By looking at the average perplexity, we can assess the overall linguistic proximity of a book with the rest of the books. The lowest average perplexity was achieved for the 17th book. By looking at the highest confidence interval, we see that the 14th book has the higher perplexity. This means that it comprises excerpts that are weakly associated with the remaining books, and the highest average perplexity was achieved for the 9th Iliad book. For Odyssey, it was the 9th book that was most in red, shown here, and the 16th, shown in green here, that was least strongly linguistically associated with the remaining books. What is surprising in this diagram, however, is that the 24th book that comprises excerpts that are both most weakly and most strongly associated with the rest. We also trained one language model per book of each poem, and we used each such model to compute the perplexity score per book in the respective poem. By employing then Pearson's Rho, we computed two correlation heat maps, one per poem. We observed that in the left figure, the 5th book of Iliad has a negative correlation with the 9th book. We also observe a positive correlation between the 1st book and the 19th, and between the 15th and the 24th. More interesting, however, is the finding of the correlation study for Odyssey. The 9th and 10th books are negatively correlated with most other books. Most cells are in blue, as you can see here, except from each other, the red box in the 10th row, and book 12 also seems to follow suit in being consistently negatively related to the rest of the books. We also observe a clear positive correlation with 9 and 10 there. There also seems to be a strong positive correlation on books 2, 19 and 24. Regarding INS, we use the 24 Iliad and 24 Odyssey language models respectively to compute 48 perplexity scores per IN. Each of these models is trained on all books of the respective poem but one. 1000 excerpts were randomly sampled per IN of 600 characters each, and the average perplexity is computed per model and per IN. These figures present these perplexity scores. To Hermes is the least likely IN of the four to have been written by the authors of Iliad and Odyssey. On the other hand, To Aphrodite is the IN that is most likely written by the authors of Iliad. To Aphrodite, shown in red, achieves a similar perplexity with Iliad and Odyssey, that is the purple area, while To Hermes is most often above that area. We conclude that the greatest linguistic proximity to Iliad and Odyssey out of the four INs is presented by the IN To Aphrodite, an IN that is often considered by scholars such as Morris and Powell the most Homeric of all because it is close to the Homeric poems in terms of poetic language, style and theme. Next, we wanted to assess Homeric language models with regards to Homeric language understanding. To do so, first we assess the ability of human experts to classify Homeric texts. We created a questionnaire addressed to students and graduates of Greek philology departments, the purpose of which was to investigate the ability of the human experts to locate without any search for sources, such as in books or on the internet, correctly the excerpts attributed to Homer. On the one hand, we had language models-based text classifier, and on the other hand, we had the human experts. The aim of both was to classify Iliad and Odyssey excerpts in the Odyssey and on Iliad. In blue, you can see the accuracy of all human experts along with the performance of the classifier in red. The text classifier failed to classify correctly just two excerpts. By contrast, most of the human experts scored lower on accuracy, while some had significant difference. By macro-averaging the precision recall and F1 of the human experts and comparing them to the respective scores obtained for the text classifier shown in the table on the right, we observe that the latter is the best overall. This experiment verifies that statistical language models trained on Homeric texts are a promising mean for computational authorship analysis studies with regards to Homeric language. And this brings us to the concluding remarks. Homeric language models can classify Iliad and Odyssey excerpts comparably to the average human expert. Our models also suggest that To Aphrodite is the most Homeric hymn of all, and some groups of books are linguistically closer than others, while other groups are far from the rest of the same poem. Thank you for attending and listening.